one young man somewhere in Australia is going to think that he doesn't have a future and he is going to take his life. By the time that we finish from this afternoon's event, one young man will die from a drug overdose. And by the time that we go to sleep tonight, 793 men will perpetrate violence against women and children. But if it's one thing that you need to know, it's that I am passionate about young men. And I know it sounds a bit strange, why would a female have started a social enterprise for young men? But I just want to see, is there anyone else here who could bravely and courageously say that they too are passionate about young men? Yes, we've got one, we've got two. I wish I had something to give you, even a pen. But lollipops, you can hand them out when you've got a chance. So why is it that I am passionate about young men? Well, when I was 19, I started to realise that there was a lot of statistics and research that showed that young guys actually have it hard. Like for example, road accidents and suicide are the top 2 causes of death for young men in Australia. And often young men are taking their lives through road accidents, but it's actually recorded as a road accident, not as a suicide. The untreated mental health of young men costs the Australian economy $387,000 per hour in lost productivity. 89% of what we see in the media about young men is negative. So every time you see young men mentioned, 89% of the time, it's probably going to be negative. 92% of parents are concerned about the social pressures that affect their sons, and only 14% of young men volunteer in their communities, compared to about 19% of young women. So when I was 19, I realised that we were being bombarded by negative news stories about young men every night. So, we often hear the stereotypes of young men who are, involved in alcohol-fueled violence, who are involved in drag racing and being reckless with their cars, stabbings and shootings. And it was around this time that people were starting to say that this is the fatherless generation and the misguided generation, and that something needed to be done about it. But what I saw was that there were so many people complaining and nobody doing anything about it. And I kind of agreed, but I kind of agreed for a different reason. I felt like Australia was treating young men as liabilities, painting them as a burden to society, instead of empowering them and helping them to change their culture for themselves. And it was around this time that I was a second-year university student at University of Wollongong. I was studying communication and media studies. And so we learned a lot about sociology and politics. And I realised then that, if there aren't any opportunities out there, you have to create the opportunities for yourself. So I wanted to volunteer with an organisation that was going to help young men, to change this culture for themselves, to care about their own health and to care about their futures. And there wasn't anything. So I kind of said what any other, frustrated, determined, ambitious 19-year-old would do. I said, screw it. I'm going to start an organisation myself. Now let me just say, I had no idea what that actually meant. So the Top Blokes Foundation is the organisation that I started. Today we work with over 1,400 young men across New South Wales and sometimes across Australia as well, and we deliver social education programs. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But does anyone know what a top bloke is? What is the definition of a top bloke? This is one where it deserves a lollipop if someone can get it. It's a very Australian term, very UK term. Yep.
Maybe like an alpha, a leader, that can guide the other two.
An alpha, a leader, yes, they could have leadership qualities, yep.
A tough guy?
A tough guy? No. Not necessarily. What else? Yep.
The guy that you would introduce to your parents.
The guy that you would introduce to your parents. It could be. What else?
A guy who's the best he can be?
A guy who is the best that he could be. In Australia, the term top bloke is what Australian young men aspire to be. They don't care to be gentlemen, they don't necessarily care to be leaders, but they want their friends to think that they're a top bloke. So for example, if you go out drinking and he buys you a round of drinks, mate, he's a top bloke. Or when you guys are going on a road trip, like sometimes if you drive down to Melbourne or going on a road trip and he gives you petrol money, mate, top bloke. So when I looked at, okay, I'm not a young guy. I obviously don't understand exactly how young men think because I didn't live that. But I thought, how is it that we can create a culture where young men can aspire to be, like you guys said, better than themselves? And for me, it was doing research, and like you guys are about to do, getting into the minds of your customers. And I learned that for them, it's about being a top bloke. So when I first started at 19, I thought, what is it that I could do? How do I even start this process? And what I thought was, why don't I just start small? So I lived in Wollongong. Has anyone been to Wollongong? Yeah, so it's like an hour and a half down south. And in Wollongong, we have our own newspaper called the Illawarra Mercury. And they're probably the ones, predominantly giving out a lot of these negative stories. And I thought, my goal is to just be able to get one positive news story about boys in the paper. Just one. So I had run an event called the Top Bloke Awards. And it was a competition to find young men who are aged 18 to 24 who are volunteering and who could be those positive role models and breaking those negative stereotypes. So, if I had more time, I could tell you the amount of crap that people gave me for wanting to start. Like, to the point, obviously when you run an event, you need sponsorship, yeah? And people thought that it was such a ridiculous idea to do something for boys. So many people had said, but you're a girl, like, you should be doing things for girls. And like, well, boys bring things upon themselves, they don't deserve any help. And to the point, I actually I was talking to a really prominent businessman on the phone, trying to get sponsorship. And he laughed and he laughed and he laughed. And then he laughed so much that he started choking. And then he hung up on me. So for me, 10 years ago, the term boys' health, or the idea of investing in boys, was something that people didn't hear of. And for me, my job then became about public education, researching and I guess promoting why we need to focus on boys. So this was our flagship event. It was called the Top Bloke Awards. And for me, my passion was about giving young men a voice, giving them a stage, a platform, and a microphone, so that they could share their thoughts and their feelings. Because often, if you want to change things for boys, why are we asking politicians? Why are we asking policymakers? Why aren't we asking boys directly? And then at the end of the night, there was a winner called the Top Bloke of the Year. So that was 10 years ago. And my goal was one positive news story. We got two. We got two positive news stories in the paper afterwards, and we raised $5,000 for charity. So that was my first year, which I consider to be an okay year. But today, 10 years on, this is our team. When you start a business, when you start a social enterprise, obviously you don't do it for the money. I was employing people for years before I drew a wage. So it was only 2 years ago that I got my first wage, and I was getting paid 2 days a week. And then 6 months later, 3 days a week, and I just got promoted to 4 days a week. So as you can see, as a leader, as someone who is so passionate about the cause, sometimes you can't put yourself first. So these are our staff members, and we have our youth workers who go and work with the boys. And so we run different social education programs. And our biggest one is the Junior Top Blokes Mentoring Program. We have a couple of others as well. So what is it that we actually do with boys? We help boys talk about the social issues that their parents and teachers don't want to talk about. So we talk about pornography, we talk about sex, we talk about mental health. Like, I'm Arabic, and in our family there is no such thing as mental health. It's just that if you have issues, your parents didn't raise you properly, right? So sometimes parents can be the issue, or the culture can be the issue. We also talk about, cyberbullying and sexting. If there is a person under 18 who is sending a sex, like a naked image to somebody else, they are transmitting child pornography. Yeah? There are actual legalities around that young men just don't understand. They think it's just a bit of fun. And we talk about peer pressure and risk taking. So alcohol fueled violence, a lot of people are doing it because their mates doing it, drugs and alcohol. So the Junior Top Blokes Mentoring Program is a program where we take 14 to 17-year-old boys from schools, and we work with them over a 6-month period. So these are the type of boys that don't come from households where there are positive male role models. They come from households where drugs, alcohol, violence, it's just part of everyday life. Like, for example, we had one boy who grew up drinking with his dad 5 times a week, and he was only 15 years old. Or we had another boy who, he answered the front door of his house, on a Tuesday afternoon, and there was these 2 men, they asked for his mum. And these 2 men just bashed his mum at the front door. Or we have another boy who lives in his car with his mum in their high school car park because they're homeless. So these are boys where if we looked at them, we thought that they often weren't trying hard or that they didn't appreciate opportunities. But the fact is, they have such complex issues and sometimes they've experienced trauma, but we often think that they're the problem child instead of actually giving them a go. So we take them through our program, they get leadership skills, they get to talk about those issues, and at the end of the day, we help them to be able to build emotional resilience, help them to understand how to improve their own circumstances. Because we don't get to choose the cards that we're dealt with in life, but we can choose what we do with different circumstances. And then they get to raise money for a charity and they get to choose where to donate it. And this is a big deal for some of these boys. So I'm not sure where you went to school and if you had boys like this, but these sort of boys are the type to always get suspended or to get, who are considered to be the distractors of the class. So, if we run a barbecue at school, like a fundraiser, and someone gets like the job to butter the bread, they butter the bread well. Like this is just a piece of responsibility that people often don't give them or give them a try. And so what are the results of the program? We have a lot of statistics that show like 90% of young men improve their mental health and all of that. But for me, it's those stories that I hear that are like, this is what makes it worth it. So for example, we had one boy who had come from a family of intergenerational unemployment, right? People didn't care to get a job in their family. He, you get a certificate at the end of a program, he took that certificate, he got a job at a fish and chip shop. We were so excited for him. We high-fived him, we were like, mate, congratulations, that's a top bloke. Fortunately, he went home and told his family, and his family said, what, you think you're good now that you've got a job? But we've had other boys where, they've come in and they've said, look, I've got to see the principal in 30 minutes. And one of our youth workers said, why mate, what's wrong? Look, I kind of got into a fight, but I know I did wrong, so I'm going to go into the principal's office and I'll accept responsibility because I knew I had a contribution to that. And so for some of these things, for you and I, it might just be common sense. But for some of these boys where they haven't had that positive home lifestyle, it's a big growth for them. So we started small. It was literally just I in my spare bedroom. But today we've learned to scale our programs to across New South Wales. So we're based in the Illawarra, Sydney, but we've also just received funding to expand into regional New South Wales and into regional Queensland as well. So the best part, or one of the biggest parts, the most important parts for us, is around public education. So as a social enterprise, you don't get a marketing budget. Like that is, like you're doing well if you get a marketing budget. So what we do is we rely on the media. And so that means is that we have to go out on national TV, national radio, and talk about young men's health. We're still a pretty small organisation, but we're one of the only ones who are talking about it, which to me is so frustrating. It's so frustrating, but a great opportunity for us to promote the work that we're doing, but also to be able to talk about how everyone can support young men's health. So as Natasha said, late last year actually, I was awarded the New South Wales Young Australian of the Year. It's a fancy title, it's very la-di-da, but it was an incredible surprise because I saw who I was up against and they had started their charities, like they've already raised $3 million. I was like, oh man, I'm so not going to win against them. But I was fortunate. Now the thing that they kind of don't tell you is that after this you have to go to Canberra and you get to go and have lunch with the Prime Minister. And that's exciting. I put on my best dress, did my hair, had a shower. But the thing is we had to spend 3 days in Canberra and we had to take a bus over to the lodge where the Prime Minister lives. And they said, the person on the bus said, now, you're going to enjoy your time with the Prime Minister, but this is an official warning, you are not allowed to take a selfie with the Prime Minister. So okay, yeah, no problem. And so then as we arrived and we got off, there was an official at the door and they're like, look, welcome, but as you should know, there are not to be any selfies with the Prime Minister. Like, got it, yeah, are they looking at the Gen Y person for a reason? And then what happened was there was a security guard that had to tick off our names and he's like, so it's protocol, you are not allowed to take a selfie with the Prime Minister. So I was like, I think I've got it now. So then we went and there was about 30 of us and there was all this special like tea and China stuff, like cups and stuff, it was all very fancy. And then I got an opportunity to meet the Prime Minister. And I said, Prime Minister, I heard that we are not allowed to take a selfie with you. But here's the thing, right? I was a New South Wales Young Australian about to go into the competition for the national award. And I thought to myself, shit, did I just break the rules? What if they saw me and what if I suddenly become disqualified? And I was starting to stress to myself because I thought, I could have just blown a really great opportunity. And luckily, unfortunately, the Prime Minister had a photographer. I didn't take the selfie. So who am I to say no to a selfie from the Prime Minister? So that was good fun. So even though there are a lot of challenges and hardship and rejection, there are also the perks as well that are always good fun. So what I want to do with you is share very quickly 4 key, lessons that I've learned that I consider to be true for my journey and that you might also consider along the way, particularly over the next couple of weeks. And the first one is you need to settle for more. I see so many young people who don't aspire for much. They're happy to just live the status quo. They're happy to just follow in the footsteps of their parents without actually thinking about their own life journey. And so what I often say to young people is, don't work for the toothpaste company unless you are incredibly passionate about toothpaste. I want you to think about, and this couple of weeks is going to be your prime opportunity. What is that passion that you really, you really have? And what I say is that there are 2 types of people. There are those who have an issue that just makes their blood boil, right? To the point they can't sleep at night, to the point you don't get them started on that topic because you will never hear the end of it. For some people it's politics or religion, or others it's about animal welfare, whatever it is, right? For me it's around gender and young men. Do not get me started because I will talk you under the water with it. So there's those sort of people. You might be that person who has that issue that makes you so angry. It's a social justice issue where you want to direct your life to be able to impact that. Or there's the other type of people who have an incredible passion that they love, that brings them so much fun and joy, and they want to share that with others. Don't settle for less, start settling for more. True impact develops daily, not in a day. I see so many people, particularly young people, also adults, who have a great idea, that's fantastic, but they don't actually embody the qualities that are required in order to achieve that. So for me, I'm all about service leadership. I'm not in this for myself or my ego. I don't do it for the money, let me just get that clear. But I use my life as a way to service other people. And so what I often say is, some people just want to be happy in life. I don't necessarily know what the meaning of life is, but until I know the meaning of life, I'm going to create meaning for my life, and I'm going to create significance. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's not something where you can just suddenly develop something and it's going to be successful. It is something that has to continually be embedded in your daily life. So when you have a project and you don't feel like doing it that day, tough. You have to get up and you have to do it. You have to put yourself on the line, you have to sacrifice. True impact develops daily, not in a day. And dreams don't work unless you do. So many times people come up to me and say, oh, I really want to do this, I want to do that. I'm like, it's fantastic. Oh my God, that's great. What are you doing about it? Yeah. Dreams don't work unless you do. That means you sometimes have to sacrifice sleep. That means sometimes you can't go out drinking. Like I remember when I first started and I had registered Top Blokes as an organisation, one of our founding partners, I said, okay, yep, great, good, constitution, yep. What am I? You're the CEO. I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And so what I didn't realise about being CEO is that your life dramatically changes, right? Because while my friends were out, scrambling their money to try and get some alcohol on a Friday and Saturday night, I was at home learning about constitutions, learning about marketing and strategy and superannuation and tax and all this stuff that I'm an art student, that stuff doesn't come natural. But what I learned was, I'm not going to achieve that goal or that dream unless I'm going to work hard for it. And here's the last key lesson that I want to share with you today. And for me, if I had more time, I'd share all the times that people tried to kick me down. I had to bring myself back up. Fortunately, I don't have that time. But it is be so good that they can't ignore you. Back when I first started, nobody cared what I had to say. Nobody cared about young men's health. But now, people are knocking on my door. People are calling me up. Government, corporates, whoever it is. If you consistently, share your voice, you're going to get there. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about having the most consistent voice. So those are sort of my key messages. You know, you can obviously like us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of that. But I wish you the best of luck. I'm actually fortunate to be here for the next 3 weeks as well. And feel free to come up and share your stories, share your dreams. Don't just share your dreams, share with me what you're going to do to achieve them. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you so much. That was awesome, right? So what were some things you picked up from Mel's story?
So can I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Mel, you have a question.
It's going to make me work now, yeah.
Sorry, my voice is not going far. I have cold. I just want to ask about Top Block. Do they do anything about their top boys who are addicted to video games?
Yeah, we run a whole session on video games.
Okay.
Yeah. Thing is, our position on video games is it actually has a lot of positives rather than negatives, but it is about consuming it with balance. So we do talk to young men about it and the addictive qualities of it, same with pornography, the addictive qualities of it, but how they can manage that. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I should play Pokemon or something, so like I could be one with the guys, but no.
We'll talk about Pokemon later on.
Yeah. Cool.
Is there any similar organizations that focusing on young women?
Yeah, so here's the thing I didn't mention. There are so many programs that focus on young women, and I went through every one of those programs, from women-only scholarships, women-only mentoring programs, women-only awards. So the gap that we found was schools are inundated with programs for girls. And one of the principals of a school said to me, Melissa, for every program we get on our desk for boys, there are 10 women's programs. So there are nobody that focus specifically on boys and the way that boys learn. And so that's what our sort of, I guess, niche was.
Actually, I don't have question. I want to give you thanks because I start believing now we are living in a equal world. At least the girl come forward to help the boy.
Yeah, I was going to say we have so much more to go, but yes, together we will. Check, yeah.
One or the other.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for impressive work. I'm just eager to ask, if you go back in time, is there like anything you would have done differently?
Oh, this question. How do I sound like not cliche by saying every time I made a mistake, I learned from it. Like to the point, I've said things in public that you should never say in public, and that were really embarrassing. Like the very first event, my friend actually got drunk. She got behind the microphone. Like we've had disaster sort of stuff, but I've learned from every single one of them. What's something that I would change? I would probably not listen to adults as much as a 19-year-old. I know that sounds wrong. Like there are adults who really took time to invest in me, but there were so many people that said it's not going to work. Like it was only 2 years ago, so I've been doing this for 10 years. It was only 2 years ago my mum just started to believe this was an actual job. Like she's like, you're university educated, go get a proper job. So probably not to listen to those who were being negative around me. Not that I did, but I guess my journey, my story proves that they were wrong. So,
There's
One
some good
last
adults,
one.
right? There's some good adults, yeah.
With the challenge, let's say in this time, you feel like you're gonna quit or you get depressed or what's the main challenge for you?
Now?
Like during the whole period, like sometimes because of criticism or something else, you feel like quitting or you feel stressed. So
Yeah, I was always the growth mindset, right? And it's really interesting that you brought that up. I was always a growth, yeah, we're gonna do it, I believe in it. But there was a time in 2012 where I felt like we had reached the most that we could where we were, and I became that fixed mindset and I didn't know how to take it to the next step, to the point I burnt out. Has anyone burnt out before? Like literally burnt out, I had to stop everything for 6 months, I couldn't make a phone call, like that was, I don't know if I was depressed, but it was probably my deepest. Like, to the point I would just sit on the shower floor and cry, and I just didn't know what to do. So I don't know, it sounds pretty bad. But that turning point for me was, okay, I don't know what to do. I have to find people who can get me there. And there were people at that stage who were saying, maybe you should just stop top blokes, maybe you just want to get married and be a mum, you know, like all of these. I was just like, excuse me? So for me, that was a transformative stage of my journey where I was like, okay, I can only take, my skill set can only take me to a certain point. Which mentors do I need to find? Who can get me to, what course do I need to go to? What do I need to study to get me to that next phase? And if I had more time to talk about all the mentors I've had. Everyone should get a mentor. Mentors never say no. You've got mentors up the back. Mentors feel smart if you ask them to be your mentor, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but you know, it's a journey. It's up and down, and it's always incredibly hard. And you never have a day where everything's solved. There's always a new problem, new challenge. And you just have to enjoy that, I guess, if you're going to enjoy the journey.
Perfect.